In this video, we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, both from the territory of the special military operation and from the territory of Israeli-Iran conflict. First, let's talk about Israeli-Iranian conflict because we have several things to discuss, and then we will move to Ukraine. According to information we have, during the previous nights, Israelis continue bombing and attacking the territory of Iran. But when talking about their strikes, we see that they have changed their tactics and their approach. When talking about the first 2 days of this operation, the Israelis were trying to destroy as many as possible air defense positions, launching systems, nuclear facilities, military facilities, and places of laying off top Iranian authorities. And when talking about the previous 24 hours, we see that the situation has been changed because during the previous 24 hours and during the previous night, the Israelis were trying to destroy as many as possible economical facilities of Iran, and they were targeting some oil production storages, oil production facilities, and gas production facilities. For example, according to information we have, gas production has been partially suspended on Iran's South Pars field following an Israeli attack on the site today, Iranian Tasnim news agency reported. You know that every single day we see that more and more sources are talking about high prices for oil, and some sources project that the price for oil will raise up to $300. And according to information we have, this situation can lead to completely unpredictable consequences, and the most important, that most of the experts are saying that China will suffer most of all from this situation. We will discuss the role of China during the next several minutes. Another important thing that is, according to information we have, Israel tried to attack Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and according to information we have, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, leader of the Yemeni Ansar Allah movement, was reportedly the target of an Israeli assassination strike in Yemen, but the sources are saying that he managed to survive. As for now, we don't have enough of proofs to confirm his death. At the same time, Iran counterattacked and attacked the territory of Israel. But if you remember, during the previous attacks, Iranians were trying to hit the city of Tel Aviv. And when talking about the previous night, the main number of explosions and attacks took place in the northern part of Israel on the territory of the settlement by the name of Haifa. And once again, the Israelis were trying to bring down Iranian missiles, but I believe that everybody saw lots of episodes how those missiles managed to destroy some buildings and to hit the ground. Another important thing, that by the morning of the 15th of June of 2025, several casualties among civilians were reported. Now let's discuss the most important thing. We see that the blitzkrieg that most likely the Israelis were planning to create hasn't probably failed. This plan failed, and now we understand that most likely if this war continues, this is going to be another war of attrition, which means that all progress that Israeli or Iranians managed to get during the previous few days has no value at all, because now everything depends on logistics, now everything depends on production, and when talking about this situation, everything depends on the partners of Israel and the partners of Iran, whether these partners are able to support their, let's say, allies in this war. When talking about Israel, we discussed that the United States of America is the main partner of this state. When talking about Iran, the main partner of this state, the main partners of this state are the Russian Federation and China. And today we got probably the most important update since the beginning of this conflict, that a cargo plane from China flies to Iran. It might be recalled that during the short-term war between India and Pakistan, China promptly delivered military supplies to Pakistan, in particular air-to-air missiles, which provided highly effective during the war. I would like to remind you that during short war between Pakistan and India, Pakistan used air-to-air missiles, and according to information we have, lots of aircrafts of India were destroyed. So that is why now these missiles most likely we will find on the territory of Iran, and this is very important because during the next 24-48 hours, first Israeli aircrafts could be destroyed by these missiles. So anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be, but but obviously if it happens, this is going to be another round of escalation, and most likely this can lead the United States of America, this can force the United States of America to join this conflict as well on the side of Israel. Now let's return to Ukraine. We have lots of very interesting updates, changes on the ground, so let's discuss everything in details. And first, let's talk about several statements that were made by Zelensky. Zelensky is in desperate and he's in panic because he understands that most likely the situation for him will become much worse in comparison with any period of the special military operation. Zelensky acknowledged that the escalation of the conflict between Israel and Iran could have a negative impact on Ukraine. He said that this would reduce US aid to Kyiv because Washington would be helping Israel more, while European support for Ukraine would slow without the United States. So he made lots of statements about this. He made lots of statements on X, and once again he made lots of statements about prices for oil. Once again, according to the situation we have right now in the Middle East, most likely the price for oil will continue growing, and if Iran closes let's say the sea roads around its state, it will lead to multiple growth for oil prices. And we understand that Russia has the biggest income exactly from oil, probably from oil sales. So after, obviously, the Russians can have a lot of money, which means for Ukraine and Zelensky that Russia will be able to continue a special military operation for years. So that is why Zelensky is trying to force the European Union to probably restrict prices for oil, at least for the Russian Federation, on the level of $45. But obviously this will not work. The Russians during the previous night carried out another massive drone and missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. Another map was published about Russian roads, and once again the Russians were focused in the most northeastern part of the Chernigov and Sumy regions, trying to destroy as many as possible Ukrainian equipment, electronic warfare equipment, and probably communication equipment. Most likely during the next hours we're going to receive some videos, and according to information we have, the Russians attacked the territory of the city by the name of Kremenchuk. When talking about this area, there is an oil refinery plant, this one, and most likely this oil refinery plant was completely destroyed as a result of another combined strike with missiles of Iskander type and Geran drones. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. According to information we have, during the previous night, the Russians continued their offensive operation in the Sumy region, and the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 14th of June of 2025, and during the previous night, the Russians managed to secure up to 50% of the settlement of Yunakivka, which is very important. The Russians managed to improve their positions in this huge forest around the village of Satki to the northeast of the city of Sumy. And the most important thing is that the Russians most likely managed to establish complete control over the village of Alexandria and to answer the settlement of Miropolye from the north. Now, this is once again the map by the end of the 14th of June, and this is by the beginning of the 15th. So we have geolocations that confirm Russian progress on the ground. This video was published by the Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian units in this direction with artillery strikes. Several episodes were geolocated exactly in this area. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians managed to secure these forests in the vicinity of Yunakivka. This information was confirmed both by neutral mappers and by pro-Russian resources. So as for now, the Russians are focused to establish complete control over the village by the name of Satki and over this forest belt around the village. This will allow the Russians to semi-encircle the rest of the Yunakivka and to force the Ukrainians to fall back. And with the fall of Yunakivka, we can say about complete let's say about the end of the battle for the first defense layer. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Syria's direction. During the previous night, we got several changes on the ground. First of all, let's discuss updates that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources. According to them, the Russians just probably left the area of Bilogorovka in the western direction, just moved further a bit. So this is the situation, let's say, according to pro-Ukrainian sources. When talking about pro-Russian resources and according to neutral mappers, the Russians secured the village of Grigorovka completely. I would like to remind you that several days ago we got a video where we can see how Russians established their flag in the most western part of Grigorovka, and based on that video, most of the mappers adjusted their maps in Russian favor, and according to information we have, today the Russians finished the battle for this territory, and the Russians moved further in the western direction, and as I understand, the battle for Serebryanka is going to start in the very near future. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction, where the situation for the Ukrainians is getting worse and worse. First of all, let's talk about the Kliban-Byksky pockets. The Russians during the previous 24 hours improved their positions to the south of Water Reservoir, and the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their positions in the direction of the settlement by the name of Katerinovka. Currently, the distance between edge Russian positions and the village itself is less than 2 kilometers. When talking about this straight line and when talking about distance to the support line to the west of the Katerinovka, the distance is less than 2.5 kilometers. So the news around Ukraine positions in this area is tightening, and we believe that currently we can call the situation in this area as operational encirclement, or about to let's say, or the Russians are about to create this operational encirclement. The Russians are attacking these Ukrainian positions from the northeast and from the southwest. At the same time, we have several changes on the ground in the western part of Yablunovka. Most likely during the previous days, the Ukrainians managed to organize or reorganize themselves, regroup themselves, and to counterattack Russian forces in this area. And as a result of counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians managed to restore control in the most western part of the settlement. Based on this video that was published by the Russian unit, we have adjusted the map. So there were several strikes that were geolocated exactly in this area. So that is why we expect that the Russians were forced to fall back under the pressure of the armed forces of Ukraine. This is the situation by the end of the 14th of June, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 15th of June of 2025. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Dnipropetrovsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. And according to information we have, the Russians managed to secure another dense network of fortifications to the north and the northwest of Alexeyevka. So let's compare the map. This is the situation by the end of the 14th of June. The Russians just finished the battle for the settlement of Zelený Kut, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 15th of June. At least 4 strongholds were taken by the Russians as a result of offensive operation. But as we discussed in the previous videos, most likely the Ukrainians were forced to fall back in this area with the purpose to control their lines, to maintain the corridor, and to save as many as possible soldiers in this area. The Ukrainians will continue this process. They will continue withdrawing positions, and probably in 4 or 5 days this entire pocket would be taken by the Russians, and the Ukrainians would abandon their positions towards the settlement of Novopavlovka. At the same time, the Russians are not going to reduce their pressure in the direction of Zaporozhye. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions significantly by taking under control additional positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the fields. The Ukrainians are retreating, and due to this situation, we expect that during the next 48 hours, we're going to start receiving first videos of clashes on the territory of Zaporozhye. With the fall of this small village, most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from the entire pocket. And when talking about the south Zaporozhye direction, we have important updates from the territory of Gulay-Polye. Several sources reported that the Russians managed to answer the village of Gulay-Polye from the southeast. This information was confirmed by pro-Russian resources, and according to them, the Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to answer Gulay-Polye using these roads of attack. I would like to remind you that during the previous days, we were talking a lot about Russian offensive in the direction of Malinovka, and we had yesterday at least several videos that confirmed Russian presence on the ground. So now we see that the Russians are attacking not just in the direction of Malinovka, Konstantinovka. The Russians are trying to attack Ukraine positions using broad frontline attack, and currently the front line of attack is around 20 kilometers, starting from the settlement of Dorozhanka and ending by the village of Malinovka. The Russians are going to move further with the purpose to pin down the Ukrainian forces and not to allow them to redeploy some reinforcements and reserves from this area in the direction, let's say, of the settlement of Novopavlovka or the city of Pokrovsk or in the direction of Konstantinovka.